It's Friday, and you know what that means. It's the Cajun Poutine Special at Popeyes for only $3.99. No, this is not an integration, a sponsorship, an advert. It is a joke written by Kevin, who wrote today's episode. It also means that it's Florida Man Friday here on Brain Blaze, my favorite time of the week, where we're going to see what Florida people are up to. It's always crazy. Let's go. As I alluded to last week, today, I was recently Florida man. Sorry, this isn't related to this episode at all. But there was I saw some news article about how people in Florida, there's this hurricane or whatever that was coming, and they're like, shoot into the hurricane. Go down to the sea and shoot it to relieve stress and maybe change its direction. I'm like, Florida, what are you up to? Stop it. The only thing you're going to hurt is some dolphins. As I alluded to last week, today is going to be all about Florida man telling on himself, and these stories are so wild I'm not even going to bother with an introduction, so we can jump right into it. Excellent. Probably right after an ad read. Let's do the ad read! Excellent timing. Here it is. Look at my cock! And now that that's done, Florida man calls 911 80 times in one day. Instead of calling 911, you should visit the website of whichever company sponsored today's episode. The year was 2013, and it was a banner year for lazy people. DoorDash revolutionized the world for people who couldn't be bothered to get off the couch to get food delivered from places that didn't otherwise offer delivery services. But 34, it's a revolution, isn't it? Before it'd be like, what food can I get takeaway? Chinese, Indian, pizza.
No, I prefer English food, you get me? Like pizza or Chinese.
That was kind of your options. And now it's like, yeah, I want fucking Lebanese lemon chicken on a Wednesday lunchtime. Boom! And it is done. It's like having a fucking replicator. But 34-year-old Florida man Jarvis Sutton from St. Petersburg apparently couldn't figure out how to use the app. It's just... Sorry, but how amazing is it that right now I'd be like, yeah, I really want some cheesecake. There could be cheesecake here in 20 minutes. I could have a delicious slice of cheesecake in 20 minutes. It's fucking crazy. By the time this episode's end, there would be a man outside with a slice of cheesecake. Fucking hell. I love the world we live in. Or maybe he was just really, really high. Either way, he desperately wanted to get some items delivered, and he wanted them fast. And when you need someone to come to your house as quickly as possible, there's no better way than to dial 911. But only if it's a medical emergency. Otherwise, they'll tell you to fuck off. Which is honestly pretty frustrating. Right after my 21st birthday, I was involved in an accident where a drunk motorcyclist and fan of Corey Hart... Who the fuck's Corey Hart? As evidenced by the fact he was wearing sunglasses at night. Is that the song? I wear my sunglasses at night. Anyone know that? I have no idea if this is the same thing, but it just reminds me of that song from like 20 years ago. Corey Hart's probably something completely different. Nope. Corey does sound like a singer, though. Corey Hart sounds like a singer. He sped around a corner going way too fast and had to lay down his bike to avoid crashing right into my car and dying. Wait, people do that on purpose? They're like, shh, holy shit. I called 911 because that seemed like the logical thing to do, but since neither of us was bleeding out, they told me to stop tying up the line and call the local police, as if either of us knew that number. But hey, at least 411 could help with that instead of also telling me to fuck off. I was in a car accident, I had to call the police for the first time.
肩に力を伝えて、
My cock! I was like, okay. I was in a car accident, and some guy pulled out in front of me. Just to make clear, wasn't my fault. Insurance company agreed. Other guys is paying. Wasn't my fault. But I crashed into the dude because he pulled out in front of me. And it's like, ooh, okay, that was intense. Both my kids are in the car. My collision was like quite okay, but the other guy's car was fucked. All of his airbags had gone off, and he comes out. And he's like, oh, I'm really sorry. And I'm like, it's all right. And he's like, will you call the police? And I'm like, yeah, I can call the police. No worries. So I'm calling the police. And at the same time, he calls the police. And I'm like, dude, why are you calling the police? I'm calling the police. And he's like, oh, it's okay. I'm like, all right. So I'm on the phone with the police. Like, tell them I have been in a car accident. Where is it? They'll send someone. They're very nice. They didn't tell me to like call the local police. They just sent someone. And they're like, wait. Is someone else calling about this same accident at the same time? And I'm like, yes! I don't know why. He told me to call the police, then he called the police. I don't know why this is happening. And they're like, oh, well, maybe you shouldn't be. And I'm like, well, maybe. What do you want me to do about it? It's very weird. Anyway, even though 911 refused to help me, at least I had a reasonable excuse for calling them in the first place. Certainly better than Jarvis's excuse, which was that he wanted them to deliver his Kool-Aid burgers and weed. Don't phone 911 and ask them where the fuck your weed is. It's not a good idea. Florida, I don't think it's legal. Even if it was, it's not a good idea. I don't know exactly how these calls were able to go on for so long, especially since 911 is supposed to dispatch someone to your location as soon as you call, before you even say what the problem is. Is that true? How do they know what to dispatch? How do they know whether you need you could be like, my house is on fire, and we guessed ambulance. Sorry. It's just a guy with like a saline bag throwing on a fire. But Jarvis managed to call back and make this request 80 times in total. Jarvis is fucking blitzed off his mind, dude. I genuinely can't imagine being high enough to think this was a good idea. Well, Kevin, you've never been high enough then. Have I ever smoked enough weed where I thought making the phone call would be funny? Probably. Same. I've never prank called the police. That's insane. But I've definitely been high enough to think that would be amusing. And if it wasn't me, I'd be like, yeah, funny. But someone probably died because they couldn't get through to the emergency services. And then you'd be like, probably, but I still wouldn't have been dumb enough to do it. If I was, though, would I have thought it was funny enough to call back? Almost certainly. It was funny enough the first time. I imagine calling them back and telling them, no, seriously, I really need those burgers, Kool-Aid, and weed. Why'd you hang up on me? Recurring jokes have diminishing returns, though, and it would get less funny each time. Not only that, but the risk of legal trouble would increase with every phone call. I seriously want you to try to envision both how high and how stupid you would have to be to place the same phone call to 911 80 times
in a row?
In a row. He's so fucking blitzed, dude. This guy has smoked so much. Because I can't possibly imagine being that high, but I'm sure it feels fucking amazing. Yeah, if you're not like fucking bugged out and you're high enough to think the phoning the police 80 times is funny, you are fucking having a good ass time, dude. Eventually, police fucking show up to arrest Jarvis. Who was charged with misuse of the 911 system. They didn't bring you any burgers, but on the way to the police station, Jarvis was seen chewing on the foam attached to the metal cage that separated the cops from people in the back seat. Jarvis, what did you smoke, my dude? Oh man, my face hurts. Ugh. Between the fine and the court costs, he was ordered to pay about $200, but that fine wasn't paid off. He didn't pay off the fine, but he's too busy buying weed. Why did it take that long, you ask? Probably because less than a month after this incident, Jarvis was arrested and charged with robbery and multiple counts of assaulting an officer, which got him 6 years in jail. Fuck. Weirdly enough, though, this wasn't even the first misuse of 911 in St. Petersburg that week. Is that weird? St. Petersburg, I've heard of it. It's probably a big place. Earlier in the week, 47-year-old Florida woman Katrina Tisdale called 911 because she claimed she'd been robbed. When police arrived, Katrina explained that she wanted them to get back the $50 that she'd just paid a drug dealer for weed and cocaine. What the fuck you up to? You grassing on your... Oh, this episode is about people who grass on themselves. Yes, it makes sense. Not because she'd been ripped off or anything, but because she had buyer's remorse and realized that $50 was the last money she was going to have until her next disability check arrived. If we're going to talk about someone calling 911 because they had second thoughts about their drug deal, though, there's a way more interesting story that we need to focus on. Florida man calls 911 to ask if his meth is real. So... Guys, can you take a look at this? I need to know if I've been scammed or not. The cops just look at each other like... like, what the fuck? The two men, who he described as 20-year-old white males, or possibly not quite 20 yet, said they could get Thomas some meth. As a big fan of narcotics, Thomas exchanged phone numbers in the hopes they would get back to him with some sweet, sweet meth. And a couple of days later, they did. One of the men called Thomas and said they had some meth for him, but he only had $20 at the time. They said that was fine and they could bring it over. And so how much meth can you get for $20? Surely that doesn't... You can't even get weed for $20. So they gave him his address and brought over the 2 baggies of meth for them. Who's delivering meth? $20 of meth? Surely that's not worthwhile. It's so little money. He was a little hesitant because they gave him like 3 times what he should have been able to purchase for $20, but after breaking a piece apart and inspecting it, Thomas believed it was the real deal, so he indulged himself. About 90 minutes later, he wasn't feeling so good. Concerned that what he'd just snorted wasn't meth, he decided the most reasonable course of action was to call 911. I mean, that's not really the worst idea in the world, because maybe you snorted fentanyl, and you need to have one of those, what's that injection they give you that makes you not overdose on fentanyl?
6 doses of Narcan.
What's that called? I was just thinking about this the other day.
Because I need it.
No, I'm not going to remember. I know this is an extremely controversial opinion in the United States, despite all the evidence and empirical research supporting it, but I'm a fan of harm reduction when it comes to drugs. For example, yes, I absolutely agree. For example, while I would certainly prefer it if people didn't use heroin recreationally in the first place, if they're going to anyway, then I'd much rather they have access to fentanyl testing strips to make sure they know what they're taking. Fentanyl is 50 times stronger than heroin, so if a person were to take their normal dose not realizing it was fentanyl, that's a really good way to die a very preventable death. Yeah, it's like, do I think heroin use is great? No. Do I think fentanyl testing strips, do I think clean needles should be available for free, like at needle exchanges? Absolutely. Because treating someone with HIV is very... Americans, you have private healthcare. Maybe it's not so bad where you are. The heroin addicts with HIV just die and they're not an expense on the state.
What?
Perfect! Jesus Christ. Even though both science and the World Health Organization agree that it's the best way to go, President Nixon declared a war on drugs 53 years ago, and Americans refused to lose yet another war, damn it. Anyway, Thomas called 911 to explain the origin story of his meth and that he wasn't feeling the way he should, claiming that he was hallucinating. When asked if he wanted an ambulance, Thomas declined, instead asking if they could just send a police officer to come and test his meth and make sure it was real, because he feared he may have been given bath salts instead. But the request didn't end there. Thomas said he was a bit paranoid because he had been sold so much meth for only $20. He was concerned that the 2 young men he met saw this middle-aged guy living alone with a drug problem and that they were planning to rob him. As such, he specifically requested that they send an unmarked police car so that it wouldn't draw suspicion if he was being watched. He also emphasized that he wasn't trying to get the other guys in trouble, he just wanted to make sure he was really given meth before taking any more of it. I mean, at first, what sounds like an insane story now sounds like a reasonable thing that a slightly dumb person would do. Admittedly, for a guy that was allegedly hallucinating and believed he was high on bath salts, Thomas was remarkably cogent throughout the entire 4-minute-long phone call. The 911 operator was friendly and agreed to his requests, and an unmarked police car was sent to Thomas's home so the police could use some field testing strips on the 2 bags he had been sold. Thomas described himself to the police officer as an experienced drug user, which was why he was so concerned that the meth didn't make him feel the way that meth normally did. Both bags were... He's like, I don't feel awesome, and I should be feeling awesome. Both bags did ultimately test positive for meth, at which point Thomas was arrested, because of all the meth. He was charged with 2 counts of possession of a controlled substance and possession of drug paraphernalia and was released on custody after posting a $7,000 bond. The guy who couldn't get $20 together managed to get $7,000 together for bonds? Shit, dude. I was shocked to discover this when I went to look up his sentence, but the court actually wound up dismissing all of the charges against Thomas. The available records don't make it clear why that's the case, especially when he's so blatantly guilty by his own admission, but maybe they decided to be lenient with him. I think it sets a good precedent. I think not pursuing this is good. Because if Thomas had, smoked fentanyl or whatever and was afraid to call the police or an ambulance, then he would have died in his house. And I like the idea of preventing unnecessary deaths, like Kevin, so I think this was the right choice. After all, he seemed like a nice guy who just wanted to enjoy some illicit narcotics in the comfort and safety of his own home. Besides, he had a completely clean record apart from some minor driving violations. It's like me. I have a completely clean record except for many minor driving violations. There was 1 offense for speeding, 4 for driving without a seatbelt. Well, I don't have any of those, I'm not an idiot. 1 for involving a DUI with a blood alcohol content of 0.15 or above. Again, got none of those. I've just got lots of parking tickets and speeding tickets. No DUIs. DUI, damage to property or person, leaving the scene of an accident with property damage, false imprisonment, and aggravated battery with a deadly weapon in his car. Holy shit, these don't seem like minor driving offenses. So sure, there was that one time where he drunkenly hit one truck and then slammed into another truck that was pumping gas while he fled the scene, sending the vehicle's owner to the hospital. But that crime landed him 1 day in jail and a year on probation. This guy's lucky, dude. Clearly, justice had been served, and that accident was history anyway. It happened all the way back in 2019. I guess what I'm trying to say is I have no idea why the guy who invited the police to come to his house to look at meth had the charges against him dismissed, because it sets a good precedent. However, following the initial arrest, Hernando County Sheriff's Office did post this message on Facebook. If you, or someone you know, have doubts about the authenticity of any illegal narcotics you have on hand or have obtained from another person, the Hernando County Sheriff's Office is pleased to provide this testing service free of charge. Which, again, I don't know if that's supposed to be a joke, but the fact that can be, this should be a thing. They should be able to wait to test drugs for fentanyl for free, without consequence. A Florida man convicted of crimes he admitted to in a job interview. And now if I could allow things to get really dark for a moment.
No.
On June the 16th, 2021, 23-year-old Florida man Stephen Bodley was interviewing for what I can only assume was his dream job. He was applying to be a police officer with the Apopka Police Department. He's going to admit to crimes when he's applied to be a police officer. Dude, what are you doing? When you fill out an application for any job, even for McDonald's, you have to answer questions about criminal convictions you have and explain the circumstances surrounding those crimes. But Stephen had a clean record, other than some traffic violations. I don't mean that sarcastically like in the last entry either. It looks like it was just speeding tickets and toll violations and stuff. Stephen and me. However, the application for the police department must have had other questions about potential illegal behavior the person committed or for which they weren't convicted. The department isn't currently hiring, so I can't assess the application form to see exactly what was asked, but whatever the questions were, the interviewers found some of Stephen's answers to be a bit concerning. During the job interview, he was asked to elaborate on some of the concerning application answers while being given a voice stress examination conducted by a certified voice stress analyst professional. Is that really a thing?
No.
If you're unfamiliar with what that phrase means, it's pseudoscientific bullshit that some police departments have started using in lieu of the public becoming aware that polygraph tests are also pseudoscientific bullshit. Okay. So it's a lie detector. It doesn't do anything. Basically, it's a test where the examiner listens to your voice to see if you sound stressed and thus are obviously lying. Or you could just be stressed because you're in a job interview for a job that you want. Sometimes computers are used in the analysis as well, but they aren't used by default. Either way, there is absolutely zero evidence to support the efficacy of these tests, and police should really be using their resources on things that are actually effective. But sometimes, the only thing that matters is that the person being interviewed believes that the technology works. If they think they can't get away with lying and are forced to tell the truth, well, they may say some wild shit. And in Stephen's case, that wild that he said in his interview to join the police force was that he had been playing sex games with his younger cousin for years.
Oh, fuck.
Bro. Started off with me and Stephen on the same page with our parking violations. No, Stephen! When asked exactly what he meant by that, Stephen described exactly how it happened the first time in needlessly vivid detail. Then, holy shit, Kevin, you weren't kidding about it getting dark. Then stated that it happened several more times. I'll spare you those details, especially because I'm not convinced Stephen is a reliable narrator. He also tried to downplay everything by referring to the abuse as games, and by saying that it was an accident, which was very much not true. Even in his own telling of events, the only accident would have been walking naked from the shower to his bedroom without knowing that his cousin was in the house. Everything else that transpired was a deliberate choice, and one that he made repeatedly for years.
Everything you say to me is pissing me off.
When this all began, Stephen was 14 and his cousin was 9. He continued abusing her until he was 19. And she'd be, what, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 14, brah. Oh, dude. Unsurprisingly, your cousin. Some Arrested Development shit. Unsurprisingly, Stephen did not get the job. He was arrested shortly after the interview, and when he was brought back to the police station, he made similar confessions to detectives. He's like, this is all part of the job interview, right? It took almost 3 years for the case to go to trial, but seeing as Stephen had confessed to everything twice, it's not like it was going to be a difficult case for the prosecution to make. He's in court and he's like, wow, this is an in-depth job interview. I can't believe I get to go to court. This is great. And then he goes to jail. He's like there for years and he's like, wow, this is going on. Do I get paid for all this time? Unless, of course, the defense attorney was successful in getting Stephen's written application for the police department and his 2 verbal confessions stricken from evidence. Considering that I'm pretty sure the only argument she had for getting those thrown out of evidence was, they're really bad for my case, the motion was denied. She tried it. Good for her. Give it a crack. But hey, that's about the level of defense I'd expect from an attorney whose website says she looks forward to handling all of your criminal needs from a traffic ticket to homicide. God damn, I mean, don't pick a niche. Just go for it all. Also, will, handle your divorce, corporate acquisitions, that she is now between officers, and that she will answer your phone calls 24/7. I mean, I do respect the hustle, but I kind of feel like this might not be the right line of work for you. Anyway, Stephen was rightfully convicted of sexual battery of a person under 12 by a person under 18. According to the sentencing guidelines score sheet, he was facing a minimum sentence of 108.15 months and a maximum sentence of life in prison. All the reporting focused on the potential life in prison, and with just cause, because, well, Stephen. Unfortunately, that's not what he got, and nor did he get the 9-year minimum. For reasons that aren't explained in any of the available documents, the court deviated from the guidelines and only sentenced him to 54 months in prison or 4.5 years. But hey, given the age of his victim and depending on what prison he's sent to, it's possible that 4.5 years will still be a life sentence. Or more accurately, a death sentence. Yes, Stephen's gonna have a bad time in prison. Of course, I can't leave you with this story. While the premise of human garbage admits to horrific crimes in an interview to a police officer was too good to pass up, this is still brainplay, so I need to end it on a lighter note. As such, here's one final story to cleanse your palate. Oh, thank God. Florida woman calls 911 so that she can legally steal a car. Earlier this year, back in June, 37-year-old Florida woman Christy Derman called 911 from a Toyota dealership where she was attempting to carjack one of the cars on the lot. When she spoke to the operator, she explained that she was trying to make her carjacking legal. She said, "I'm trying to steal a car that's not legally mine, so you all got to come and make a report. I'm reporting this." If none of that makes sense to you, don't worry, it gets weirder. None of this makes sense to me. She's got to be high on meth or something. It is Florida, after all. When she was arrested, Christy said that she was being trained in a game of Black Ops to steal cars, and that is all of the context that is given for anything that happens. Trying to piece some sort of coherent narrative from all of this, I'm guessing that Christy was playing Call of Duty Black Ops, and some teens decided to troll her and convince her to try and steal a car. I'm also guessing that she was extraordinarily high when they convinced her to do this, and was in fact so high that she actually believed them when they told her that stealing cars is legal so long as you call 911 to report that you're doing it. Just like with the guy who demanded Kool-Aid and burgers, I can't possibly imagine being high enough to believe that stealing cars is legal so long as you tell the police. Maybe I just need better drugs, and I can always count on Hernando County Sheriff's Department to run some quality assurance on my drugs free of charge. And that's where we leave Florida for this week. See you next week. Don't phone 911 and ask them where the fuck your weed is.